Robin Gibb's voice was one of those rare instruments that made people feel like the song had been written specifically for them. That falsetto carried an ache most singers spend entire careers trying to imitate, and it convinced millions that he understood something about love they couldn't quite put into words themselves. He sold that feeling convincingly enough that the world decided it must be real, that somewhere behind the music was a man who had lived through exactly the kind of love he was describing. They were right. Only the life he had actually lived looked nothing like the version fans had constructed from the songs. His wife had stayed silent through years of rumors that would have dissolved most marriages. His family absorbs truths that never surfaced in interviews or press statements. And when the full picture finally came into view, it didn't erase the legacy Robin Gibb had built across 5 decades of popular music. It revealed the human being behind it. Someone who loved deeply, failed visibly, and spent his final years attempting to repair the damage that love and weakness had left behind. In this video, we're uncovering what Dwina Gibb eventually revealed about Robin's affair, the daughter he fathered outside their marriage, and the secrets that followed him all the way to the end. By the late 1990s and well into the early 2000s, the Bee Gees had done something most pop music acts never manage. They had survived their own era. Disco had risen and collapsed under the weight of its own excess, taking most of its associated artists into irrelevance, and the Bee Gees had come out the other side with their credibility not just preserved, but deepened. Younger musicians name-dropped them without irony. Major award shows brought them back to center stage. Fans who had grown up dancing to Stayin' Alive in 1977 were now introducing their own teenagers to Saturday Night Fever. The group's harmony, that layered intertwining of voices that felt bigger than any individual contributor, had aged better than almost anyone in the music industry had predicted. Robin Gibb, the one with the trembling vibrato and the ability to deliver heartbreak as what sounded like first-hand testimony, stood at the center of that revival, looking from the outside like a man who had arrived exactly where he was meant to be. He had been married to Dwina Murphy Gibb since 1985, and their life together on a sprawling Oxfordshire estate appeared, at least from a distance, like the version of success most people imagine when they dream about making it. Dwina was not a typical rock musician's spouse. She had built her own identity entirely separate from her husband's fame, working as an artist and writer, and identifying as a former Druid priestess whose views on spiritual freedom and unconventional partnership were a consistent feature of her public interviews. She described love as something that could exist in forms most people never recognize as legitimate, and she once spoke openly about being bisexual, framing her understanding of partnership through a lens that tabloids would later spend years misrepresenting. That openness, and the careful way she discussed it publicly, left enough interpretive space for speculation about the nature of their marriage to build steadily over the years. Whether that speculation was accurate, neither Robin nor Dwina ever confirmed in any verified statement. What was genuinely happening inside that household took years to surface. And when it did, it came not through confession, but through legal documentation and property records that became public only after Robin's death. A woman named Clare Yang had been hired to manage the estate, and her presence had gradually developed into something well beyond a professional arrangement. The relationship she and Robin maintained remained hidden long enough that it had produced a child before the outside world had any indication it existed. Born in 2008, the girl was named Snow Evelyn Robin Juliet Gibb, carrying her father's name as a deliberate acknowledgement of who she belongs to. Her existence was confirmed through legal records and publicly acknowledged by the Gibb family following Robin's death in 2012. Property records published in the British press afterward confirmed that Robin had purchased a home near the estate for Clare and Snow, a financial arrangement made quietly, without announcement or public explanation of any kind. The tabloids received the story the way tabloids receive anything involving famous people and secret children. Headlines framed it as betrayal. Some coverage describes Dwina's response as spiritual acceptance, Other outlets called it grief wearing a calm expression. None of them could fully confirm what she was actually experiencing, because Dwina never granted the kind of raw, unscripted interview that would have answered that question honestly. What she did say, across various public appearances and written statements, was that she and Robin had shared a bond that survived their most painful moments and continued to hold meaning. Whether that constituted forgiveness in the conventional sense or something more layered and personal that most people don't have a word for, only the people inside that marriage could say. For everyone observing from outside, her silence and her continued, unwavering presence beside him communicated far more than any prepared statement would have. The confirmed facts of the affair and the child were enough for most people. But certain corners of the press had more appetite than the facts could satisfy. In the period following Robin's death, tabloids and gossip blogs began circulating claims about his sexuality, suggesting a secret relationship with another man had run parallel to everything else in his private life. None of those claims came with documentation. None were supported by verified, on-the-record testimony from anyone with direct knowledge. Each story traced back to anonymous sources or second-hand accounts shared without names attached, repeated often enough that they began acquiring the texture of established fact. Robin had always kept his interior life carefully guarded, and his emotional sensitivity, the same quality that made his songwriting communicate so directly to listeners, had a long history of being misread by journalists who preferred a simpler, more dramatic story. That sensitivity wasn't a clue to anything concealed. It was simply who he was. The damage those rumors caused to his family and to fans still grieving his loss never received the same column inches as the rumors themselves. By 2010, Robin's cancer diagnosis had become the defining reality of his life in a way that no amount of private chaos could come close to matching. Colorectal cancer, which spread to his liver over the following months, brought years of accumulated turbulence into stark contrast against a much more immediate problem. He had spoken in earlier years about resilience, about moving through difficulty rather than being stopped by it, about believing that the things that hurt you eventually found their way into the music and became something useful. The illness tested that belief at a level none of his previous experience had prepared him for. Friends and family members who visited him during treatment consistently described a man whose attention had narrowed entirely to the people he cared about most. The guilt he had carried about the affair and its consequences seemed, during those months, to have transformed into something more purposeful, a determination to repair whatever damage could still be reached before the window closed. He wrote poetry at night when sleep wouldn't arrive. One line that Dwina shared publicly afterward read, "Even when the music stops, the heart must still keep time." And the people who knew him best heard in that line every conversation he hadn't found a way to have in person. Dwina remained at Robin's side through all of it, and that single fact communicated more than any formal statements she could have issued to the press. Visitors to his hospital room described her there consistently, reading to him, sitting in quiet, keeping the noise of the outside world from reaching him. Whatever fractures the affair had opened up between them hadn't destroyed the foundation of what had existed for nearly 30 years. Barry Gibb, the last surviving member of the Bee Gees, said in a later interview that Robin had always lived for love, and that observation wasn't offered as a gentle reframing of his mistakes. It was an honest accounting of how Robin had always operated. Love, for him, arrived with complications he hadn't anticipated, and consequences he couldn't contain. But withdrawing from it was never something he knew how to do. And in those final months, the people around him felt that more clearly than they ever had before. After his passing, estate records confirmed that a separate trust fund had been established for Snow, ensuring she would be financially cared for independently of the main estate. The bulk of his assets passed to Dwina and his 3 older children, a distribution that followed both legal convention and Robin's apparent intention to balance two families he had never fully reconciled while he was alive. Clare Yang and Snow did not attend the main funeral service at St. Mary's Church in Tame on the 22nd of May, 2012, paying their respects privately instead, a detail confirmed at the time by the BBC and The Guardian. Dwina attended the service dressed in white and delivered a poem she had written herself, one that spoke not about betrayal or grief, but about light, eternity, and the belief that love persists past the point where the body carrying it gives out. Her hands trembled as she read. She didn't visibly cry. The image stayed with everyone who was there. Robin Gibb died on the 20th of May, 2012, 62 years after his birth in Manchester. The Bee Gees' catalog climbed streaming charts immediately. Radio stations across Britain and the United States ran tribute programming that stretched across entire afternoons. Fans gathered outside venues where he had performed decades earlier and sang words they had carried in their memories since childhood back into the open air. How deep is your love had always contained something aching inside it, some quality of longing that sounded like it had come from actual experience rather than craft. And in the days following his death, hearing it became almost difficult to get through. Behind the public tributes and the flowers left outside his Oxfordshire home, family members described a personal message Robin had apparently composed before he died, expressing his hope that the two families he was leaving behind might find peace with each other over time. That message was never officially published and cannot be verified through any document, but it appeared in several accounts from people close to the household, and it matched something fundamental about who Robin had always been. He once told an interviewer that he feared leaving things unsaid far more than he feared death itself, and a final letter addressed to the people he loved would have been exactly that. In the years since, Dwina has positioned herself quietly as the guardian of his memory, rather than as a voice seeking public recognition for what she lived through. The interviews she has given since his passing describe Robin as loving, creatively restless, and genuinely complicated, and she has never spoken about Clare Yang with bitterness or public blame. Barry returned to live performance and the Bee Gees' catalog, speaking in concerts about missing Robin's laugh specifically, not his voice or his talent, but the laugh, a detail that carried more grief than any prepared statement could have matched. Snow and Robin's older children have remained largely private, choosing lives outside the reach of the fame that followed their father through every decade of his adult life. The documented facts of Robin Gibb's personal life are clear. An affair produced a child. A marriage survived the revelation. A family absorbed the disruption and continued moving forward. A man used his final years to attend to the relationships that mattered most. The unverified claims built on top of those facts, the open marriage speculation, the rumors about his sexuality, never found a factual foundation and remain the product of an industry that generates revenue by filling in blanks it was never invited to approach. What Robin left behind was music that has outlasted every headline ever attached to his name. Those recordings still travel across radio frequencies and streaming platforms and living rooms, reaching new listeners who have no idea what the tabloids once said about him. And that is exactly how it should be. The falsetto he carried for 50 years never sounded manufactured. It sounded like a man reporting back from somewhere that hurt, using the only language that was fully available to him. And that, perhaps, is the most honest thing anyone can say about Robin Gibb. He used the songs to speak the truths he couldn't carry anywhere else. His final interview included a line that the people who loved him have kept close ever since. "I've had a wonderful life. I've made mistakes, but the music always forgave me." That wasn't performance. That was a man who understood exactly what he was leaving behind, and who had made his peace with it.